I actually have family in Czech Republic, so.
Right. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Today is Monday. It's a change from our usual Tuesday sessions. So welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live and Instagram Live as well, called Thriving Together, Unveiling Solutions for Stress and Burnout in Healthcare. I am super excited for today's session because Nina and myself, we have just celebrated being finalists for the Mental Award in the category of Mental Health Hero here in Dubai. So super exciting few weeks for us. Our platform on Thriving Together is also growing. And our nomination was actually because of that very reason, because of this initiative that we have started back in March, a safe space, a platform for healthcare professionals and actually anyone who is interested in well-being solutions can come here, listen, find something that would work for you, and then you can create a positive change on an individual level. And hopefully, when it's working for you, you will share it with your community. So we are here to create this ripple positive effect in our communities. So hello. My name is Magda Snowden, and I am who I am. Number one, I'm a human. I am very excited and very passionate about empowering people with human skills. This is what we see is missing currently in leadership a lot. There is a huge gap between the strategic acumen and the human skills. And when I talk about human skills, I talk about emotional intelligence, mental agility, empathy, compassion, and so on. So today I am super excited because I have a guest, and definitely there is a lot of synergies between. You will witness a very exciting conversation. So Dr. Vedrana Mladina, PhD. She is a licensed clinical psychologist with 20 plus years of experience, originally from Bosnia. So we are both from Europe. Dr. Mladina obtained her undergraduate and postgraduate degree from Karl Franzens University of Graz, Austria. And before joining the New York University, Abu Dhabi 8 years ago, she spent 14 years in the Netherlands, working in the International Criminal Tribunal for the ex-Yugoslavia and International Criminal Court in The Hague, providing psychological support for victims of war crimes worldwide. So Dr. Mladina is trained in CBT, ACT, and in schema therapy, and certified in nutritional psychology. She is experienced in treating a wide range of disorders, and I'm just going to mention a few because the list is long. So trauma, anxiety, depression, stress and burnout, definitely. This is of interest to our session. Personality disorders, body image, and self-esteem related difficulties. Dr. Mladina is currently serving her second term as the first Middle East Psychological Association UAE chapter director. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Mladina.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is so exciting for me to be here with you, Magda, and always such a pleasure to, talk to you and obviously also to welcome your audience.
Lovely. So this is not an interview type, actually, what we do here in our sessions. Is very much a human conversation. It's very much a coaching conversation because I am a passionate coach. I use curiosity and empathy as a point of connection. So I've mentioned many times here before that I have learned so much in these sessions that actually I feel like I'm completing another MBA in human psychology, in stress and burnout solutions, and in well-being solutions. So today's session title is called Beyond the Calling, Cultivating Wellbeing in Healthcare. We both have healthcare background. And number one criteria for choosing of our speakers for this session is energetic match. And I can almost feel the energy flowing like through the digital space. We are both smiling, we are laughing, we are having good times, even though we're going to be discussing issues about stress and burnout. And why am I always in so excited mood in these sessions? Because there is a green light. We are not only here to bring the grim statistics and say, 57% of people here in the UAE feel lonely. But what is on individual level and organizational level that we can do to improve these situations? So we bring solutions, we bring definitions, we bring variety of experiences. Why? Because we don't issue prescriptions. Even though we come from healthcare, everyone has to find something that is uniquely working for them and then continuously applying to see the best positive effect. So first question, Dr. Mladina, for you. You have a wealth of experience across multiple continents and cultures. I have only mentioned a few places that you have worked. So how has this global perspective shaped your understanding of stress, trauma, and well-being in healthcare?
That's a great question. Thank you. And, I have a wealth of experience because I'm also very old by now. So it naturally comes with age. It's one of the advantages of aging in profession as well. And this profession of, being a mental health provider is kind of a forever job. It never stops. You never stop learning. So first off, it helps me so much in my personal growth. I was always a curious person. I grew up in a very small environment, small town in Bosnia. I kind of always felt like that I'm outgrowing the town. I am also very tall, so it was maybe physically as well. Anyways, I always kind of wanted to know more, to know the world. But then what really, in a way, opened my mind is, the hardship I had to go through personally, being a young person going through a civil war in my country. Unfortunately, we have many civil wars happening at the moment, also very close by and around us, and, a lot of people suffering. So I would say, if there was one thing that I was discovering repeatedly, was that we all humans suffer in the same way. We all bounce back in the same way, because where there's suffering, there's resilience as well, right? But we also, have to try to only go through meaningful suffering. And this I'm saying, especially in the context of work-related stress, and especially in healthcare. Globally speaking, healthcare, I think, has gotten into a crisis during COVID. I think healthcare was in crisis before, but it was just became so naked and evident during COVID. And I think we never recovered, to be completely honest. It just got worse. A lot of the people left healthcare, good people, such as yourself, Magda. But that doesn't mean they didn't believe in the profession. It's a calling, right? But I think people have reached the point, health providers in general, where there was a choice between, staying in a system that, might be destroying them slowly, and that maybe that suffering we all sort of self-sacrifice, I'd say, we choose as healthcare providers, because it's a calling and it's a higher calling, that it started to lose meaning, right? And I think it's something that is important for us to talk about, because meaning is a very individual thing, right? And we all are, almost we owe it to ourselves to find meaning in jobs, in the way we lead lives, what we are doing, what we are going through, right? So nobody else can do it for us. And I think for me, all these years, all the jobs I was doing were meaningful in one way or another, but they were also challenging. And sometimes the challenge that comes from the system you're working in can override the meaning, right? And the personal meaning and the calling in itself. So I'm just throwing stuff in here, but these were the things that I was, personally always struggling with, as a professional, as a person, as a woman as well, to name the gender dimension here that we can still not ignore, unfortunately. And we keep going, we all keep going, but, it's really important to sometimes slow down and pace yourself and reflect, because we cannot take good care of people if we are not okay. And that really goes for anyone.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. I am having goosebumps. Seriously, there is so much uh, stuff that resonates. What you have just said, I can literally recall situations and I can see them in front of me. When you mentioned the meaningful suffering and the calling, we enter the profession because of the calling, is not just a job. And I just try to unpick it so we can get to few really important concepts. So when I was training as a nurse, throughout my training career and even before, I heard patient comes first. Patient comes first, and there is just one way of looking at it. Patient comes first, and that's it. And then I started learning through going through different systems, and I have worked in the UK, Dubai, and Kuwait, that if my batteries are not replenished and my cup is empty, there is no way I'm going to give anything that is of value and that is meaningful and that is safe, compassionate, empathetic to my patient.
Right.
However, in healthcare, also what I've witnessed myself, and thank you very much for being so open and so candid, because for us to shift the narrative, the conversation has to be almost brutal. We have to be really raw how we put the things on the table. And as we just discussed before these sessions, we come from Eastern Central Europe. So, the
Yeah,
conversation is always straightforward. There is
yeah,
no sugar coating what needs to happen. And people learn through storytelling. So the hero narrative, it is something that I started researching a lot for the past few months. There is a lot of research also pointing out that when we continue calling the healthcare professionals heroes, it really puts a barrier in front of that professional to recognize the limits. So to recognize that they're humans and humans have limits, to ask for help when they are stressed. So there is almost like a continuous cycle. I'm gonna be stressed, and there is a chronic stress, and then there is a burnout. And then I will leave a profession, or I might take even more drastic actions. So
yeah.
I want to really also have your take on the hero narrative
Mhm.
from someone
Yeah,
who's
you got me there. you know, hero, right? It comes with a cape, superpowers, and a lot of responsibility to do magic, right? And to save the day every single day. And look, in that sense, of course, healthcare providers are definitely making the impossible possible every single day, right? Like people are literally saving lives. But we don't need to add to that burden of, come on, like we are all human. We can all have a bad day. And I think, and this is not me trying to create a conspiracy theory because I'm against those things. I'm a very logical person. I think because the system was sort of falling apart and it was really hard to, I think, um, attract people still to stay because it was only more work, more patients per nurse, per doctor, longer hours. Like you're kind of doomed to fail, to be honest. And, like it's all driven, of course, by money eventually, which, like any business, I totally get. Naming then people who are constantly there, risking their lives, not going home, getting COVID left and right in the hospital, and you tell them, now you're heroes. What are they supposed to do? Leave? you know? So I think it was kind of a bit of a, carrot and a stick situation. He's like, oh, come on, like we call you heroes. So like that's a nice trade-off, right?
Mm.
And I'm not trying to diminish the heroic actual actions, right? And the awards that were given under this name. But now we're trying to also talk about the semantics here. And as a psychologist, language
yeah.
does a lot to a person's mind, right? And like you said, it adds the responsibility. It also adds maybe some sort of self-destructive component of like, I need to literally die on the job. And
Mm.
this is, and I'm quoting myself here, I always tell people that I'm working with, if I'm in charge of the team, I'm like, you're not supposed to die on the job. Literally. If you feel like you're dying on the job, and I mean it, you need to take a step back because nobody is asking that from you. Like, it's not necessary. We're not doing that, right? So I think there's this whole trend of, do as much as possible and then some more, and, prove yourself. And, and of course, it makes sense when we are actually saving a life and we drop everything and we know that that's when the life comes first, right? Like, let's leave the patient aside. But like you said, Magda, if you're always going to work and it's like, okay, patient comes first, what does that leave you with, right? Does that mean that you are not important at all? Because that should not mean that, right? You're there to do a job that you're trained for. And yes, you are there to serve the patient in that sense. But you're also there to make sure that you will get home that day as well and have some energy left, right? And if the patient comes first and only the patient, and we all know there are different patients, right? Like that can kind of like really test our patience. And if we cannot even go to our boss and say, listen, that's just a difficult person, like medically speaking, they're okay, right? They're just demanding, can I just like take a little break, right? And if there's no understanding for that, and there's no backing you up, and it might mean that you're losing your job, that will make you not say anything and then withdraw some more. And, like, be a hero, continue to be a hero, but at what cost? This is really maybe my main point. At what cost are we supposed to be heroes? And every hero has a breaking point, right? Like, we know
Wow.
all the stories, right?
Wow.
Everyone has a kryptonite, so nobody is indestructible.
Every hero has a breaking point. I absolutely love it. So thank you for adding a different perspective to the hero narrative, because it is not me criticizing, the system, saying that we are heroes. Of course, I felt valued and appreciated when public was clapping for us during the pandemic, right? Although I was here in Dubai and the narrative was very different. I know that a lot of my colleagues in the UK suffered immensely. Looking at the statistics, like 60,000 of NHS workers suffered PTSD. So we know the pandemic has revealed what needs to be done. So there are definitely issues in the system, and the issues were there before. But I think the pandemic just opened our eyes that we need to be perhaps more curious, because not questioning certain narratives and just continuing the same work in the reactive, not proactive way, being the hero and always putting the patient first and feeling ashamed very often, or feeling maybe I don't have the right communication skills even to say that I am stressed, that I am suffering, or something is going on with my colleagues. One of my favorite phrases that we keep coming back to these sessions is that chronic stress and burnout is not a mandatory tax that we have to pay for success in the healthcare profession. And this is one of the narrative shifts that we are promoting, and we are building community. And honestly, so far, 7 months in these sessions, the feedback that we have received, yes, this conversation is not happening in many organizations. People don't have, I don't know, the courage to start this kind of conversation. But I also know from my own example before that I was the type of leader that well-being conversation was not my priority. I was oriented on outcomes. I was the hardcore leader, 200% productivity, and I was expecting the same from my team. And during the pandemic, awakening came for me, and I discovered the human-oriented leadership, that I discovered the benefits when I embrace the human in front of me and my own humanity. I realized that I have limits. I start treating myself in a more kinder and gentle way guess what? The productivity increases. People are more engaged. They are more loyal to the organizations that deliver better care to their patients, to organizations, to community.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Care, if you give care, you will receive that back, right?
Mhm.
And that's why, I mean, we're always trying to explain, from mental health perspective, it's such a great investment, money wise, if nothing else, to invest in, supporting people at work and giving them more flexibility, which was one of the positive effects of the pandemic, if we may call anything positive in that context. But let's say increasing flexibility in terms of how people can do the job and from where, and how that helps them also not compromise their family lives or private lives, whatever the situation is. And I think just like being less rigid about it. I think the main problem in healthcare in general is it's naturally a very rigid system, and for a reason, right? So much needs to be controlled,
Yeah.
and it has to be a well-oiled machine. So I totally get that. And I don't think a lot will be changed. It will never be super flexible, but it has to allow for humanity. you know and I know it sounds really silly to have to say that in the context of healthcare, which is focused on human, but honestly it's not a humane system always, when it comes to patients as well, and patients' rights, right? Especially, I'll just talk about the mental health, when people are admitted to psychiatric wards and they want to leave and they can't, and it's very difficult to overcome that, as a person, and knowing that, like, now I don't decide anymore, right? Many times people don't even know what kind of treatments they're getting, like for physical health and mental health. Like there has to be more communication, like you said, and more, I think patient empowerment in the sense of, like, do you agree with this approach? Of course, there's a lot of stuff that's happening now because of the use of social media and internet. Everybody thinks they are a doctor, they are a nurse, and they are a psychologist. So with all due respect, honestly, like, it's not that easy. So we spend a lot of time dismantling the myths, right? Because people come with these preconceived notions. Back in the day, doctor and nurse, had authority. Like what they told you, that was founded in science, right? So you didn't have to necessarily come in with doubts. You were kind of trusting them, per default. But now everything is being challenged, which is good. It keeps us on our toes. We have to stay informed. And I think people want to have more active role in their treatment and recovery. And I agree that, and I welcome that. But there's this term, I think Plato used it when, he was talking about democracy. There's hyper democracy, right? It's not a good thing because it actually equalizes the opinion of somebody who doesn't know anything about something with the opinion of the actual expert in that, only to give a voice. So I think we also need to, kind of protect the profession in that sense. But we cannot do that if we don't value the people who are doing the profession, by allowing them to take a breather, like you said, by making them realize they don't have to be robotic to be good leaders in healthcare. And what you described about yourself was you were just robotic about it. The moment you switched off the robot, you were human, and you were like, wait, I don't have to do it. It's such a relief. Like, I don't have to push, the big stone up the hill, like, because it ain't gonna work. And so, and I'm asking everybody else to push with me, right? Right. So, I think it's really beautiful to listen to how humbling that moment was. And not many people want to admit to those moments, right? Um, and also, I think moments when we realize that it's best to leave a certain working environment, or make a change, or take a break. And in mental health, and I'm sure also in medical field is the same. how can you sell health if you're unhealthy? Who's going to believe you, right? If it's evident that you're not doing well, your patients will be like, what is she talking about? Like, she's falling
Mhm.
apart. Like, why would I even,
Mhm.
like, why would I talk to her? Like, why would I listen to her? So we also have to understand that as health providers, professionals, we are perceived by people.
Yeah.
It's a very public profession in a way, although it's so confidential. You know what I mean? Like, it's both at the same time. You're representing the system, you're giving them hope for
Mhm.
health. But if you're not living it, you're not radiating that, like, you lost the game. So I
Mhm.
think this is something why, like, all of us have to do self checks. And we all know doctors are the worst patients. And, like, mental health professionals are definitely not like great at taking care of themselves. But that's why we're talking today, because it's also for us to just like, wait a minute, like, am I doing what I'm talking about today? Like, am I like checking off those boxes, or am I just like happy to talk about it to other people?
Mm. Wow, wow, wow. Listening again to this, I have specific situation from my nursing career in front of my very own eyes. When you say that patients can feel, they can sense what is actually happening around them. How many times patients came to me and say, why there is no nurses available at the station? I can see them running around. They have too many patients assigned. This is what patient will say. Or they will ask the nurses, have you been for your lunch break? Or they will bring food for us because they would see that, the situation is really hectic and we don't have time to go to the staff room and eat. So why is it so difficult for the healthcare professional to notice themselves that it now is the time to refill the battery before it hits red? Because when it hits red, it takes
Mm.
a lot of time to even replenish the basics.
It does. Well, why? It's because patients come first, right? Like you said it before, right? So it's like your thing. No, but it's because that is what your training is about, what our training is about. There was no part of training. I'm a mental health professional. Okay, I went to university a million years ago, but still, I specialized in clinical psychology. There was not one lesson about self care. I
Mm,
swear. It was a self discovery journey, learning from my own mistakes and my burnouts. And
mm,
let me tell you from my own experience, once you are burnt out, it's so hard to come back.
mm,
Literally, it was such a struggle for me. Like,
mm,
last time I had burnout, I was working at the ICC back then. And, it was a demanding job, but more because of the system and the politics of the organization than actually working with victims. It took me, and I consider myself like, I'm made of fire and whatnot, right? I was just so broken. Like, it took me at least a year with all of my skills, with knowing what's happening with me. Nothing helped.
mm.
Nothing other than just resting, taking time, and just having self-compassion, like you said. This is when I learned about self-compassion.
Wow.
And it was such a strange concept. I'm like, what do you mean? I shouldn't beat myself up? What? Because, a therapist, going to a therapist, oh boy, that was a challenge, right? And first thing she taught me, my therapist, she was like, you need to be nicer to yourself. Like, it cannot all be your fault. Come on, think about it. And I was like, what is she talking about? Of course it's my fault. you know, so all these things, like, I was, of course, irrational, but that was my exactly like I was, like, being a hero. And then, like, I reached my limit and I just didn't know left from right,
Mm,
and it was really hard, but it really, like, one of my good friends and colleagues who is also a therapist said, you know what, all of that bad stuff that happens to us, because sometimes you're like, well, if people knew what kind of a mess I am, would they be coming to me sometimes, for therapy? It's like, it makes us better therapists. And I think, same was for you, right? In nursing, just noticing these things. And now, you're a better coach for it.
yeah.
Because honestly, that is a sort of meaningful suffering that we then turn into kind of a medicine for other people, like learn from my mistakes, right?
Yes.
The best way to learn is from other people's mistakes. I always
Yeah.
tell everybody, why don't you learn from somebody else's mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm very big, like today, but also in therapy, big on self-disclosure, just to demystify this
Mhm.
thing, because there's a whole trend of, like therapists being gurus and experts. I do not like those terms, like just like heroes, right? I'm like, we're all people first.
Yeah.
We all mess up. We
Yeah.
all don't know what to do at times,
Mm.
honestly. But if I knew what to do all the time, I would be wondering, like, what's my purpose in this life? If I'm not learning anymore, if I have all the answers, there's something wrong with me that, like I don't want to have all the answers. That means I'm not curious enough. I'm arrogant. I think I know it all. That is dangerous in our profession. Because,
Yeah.
like you said in the beginning, Magda, I love that. We learn from people we serve.
Yeah.
And that's why this is the best profession ever, right? With all the mess that comes with it, because you never stop learning, you never stop discovering what humans are capable of. And I'm grateful for every moment where people open up enough to me for me
Mm.
to learn from them. So I'm a huge fan of
Mm.
this profession and just helping people in general.
Yeah.
There's a lot of exchange that happens there.
Yeah, love it, love it, love it. So the best stories come from scars, not from wounds, actually. We need to go through a situation and learn it. And it's almost to say, yes, suffering needs to happen. Suffering is a normal part of life, right? It's
Yes.
what we're going to do with this suffering. And then we go back to what, Dr. You have mentioned before, the meaningful suffering.
Yes.
So
That's the
is
key.
learning that is going to come at the end. That not only it's gonna make meaning for us, but also I can then share this story, my story. Like I'm very raw and very open, and I will say I was this type of leader I wish I never met in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, that's totally fair. Yeah.
that then the empowerment on my level and my clients come from this type of story. I'm not perfect. I haven't learned, as you said, this type of skill in my nursing school. I wish I knew about emotional intelligence, mental agility, how to prevent conflict, how to navigate daily stress, how to deal with difficult patients, how not to label people, because labeling difficult, frequent flyer, challenging doctor, whatever.
Mm-mm-mm.
When we start labeling and putting judgment, we just put people in boxes. And
Yeah.
then when we start exercising curiosity and empathy, we start asking questions because they are human, as you said. So they can make mistakes. I can make a mistake. They can make mistakes. So let us understand why they're behaving this way. However, this is all easy because I have this type of discussions almost on a daily basis. When we are in a system, let's say in a healthcare system that is extremely fast moving,
Yeah.
and we are continuously short resources, human resources, nothing works according to the plan that we imagine, it's very easy to adopt the autopilot mode and just
Yeah.
go in a ticking boxes activity. So it's a protective mechanism for a human that is overwhelmed and is stressed to go sometimes into this autopilot and just tick boxes instead of start using empathy and curiosity when the most
Yeah.
challenging situation is happening.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's easier said than done, everything we are talking about, right? But we are also living examples of, you can turn things around.
Mm,
And you can kind of turn it into something useful, right? um, I want to go back to what we were talking about, like you mentioned it earlier, and then I'll come back to this point as well. It's connected, that you don't, like, you're not really, it doesn't have to come to burnout for you to know that you were successful. I mean, it's paradoxical, isn't it, right? Why would you have to make yourself sick or fall ill to prove that you have done your all, right? Okay, first off, let's not do that. And if the job requires you to burn out, then there's something wrong with the job, right? Or the job description or the system, like you said, right? I'm not talking about times of crisis. I'm never doing that. Like, because that in crisis, we drop everything, we
Yep.
focus, but then we need to bounce back. I'm talking about, day-to-day business, right? Um, and so having that mentality of like, I need to drop that, only then I know I gave it my all. I'm seeing it because I work now in college mental health, right? I work with young people, and honestly, like 18, 19-year-olds have burnout.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was misdiagnosing, because you have to question yourself. I was like, wait a minute, like, wait, 18? But like I'm talking to a 45-year-old who has, like worked for 20 years already and like, is having like, is in a ditch.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they will tell you stuff like, oh, this PhD program is good because they say, if it's not gonna make you suicidal, it's not good program. Then I heard that. And this, they're not even joking. I'm like, excuse me, what? They're like, yeah, it has to break you. So, okay. So it's even before they enter a workforce. That's why
Yeah.
I'm saying all of this. It's even before. It's that competitive. It's already that toxic. I will use that
Mm-hmm.
word consciously, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you even expect? It's before they even started, right? For us, we had at least that period of innocence, like of, before everything started falling apart and being just madness. So we remember those days, but I'm just worried for young people because school is incredibly stressful and competitive. They're entering workforce already tired of life.
Mm-hmm.
I work with young people. I sometimes feel like I'm doing geriatric psychology. It's like kind of end of life. Like it can't be real. Come on. So I think you know, going to work and feeling that hopeless, and this is the worst thing for human beings. We always want to have hope, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
like uncertainty. We don't like when we don't have hope, right? We can't deal with that, in a healthy manner. I think all of us, like I'll just give an example. If I know I'm going to have a full day with some additional stuff and, it will require a lot of energy from me, the easiest way is to think like, oh God, like I'm going to get through this day. Poor me. Why did I say yes to all these things, right? Self-blame, whatever, self-criticism. But I intuitively now, but this is because, I worked through it. Now it's intuitive, but it wasn't. Like I focus on first, what's going to bring me joy today at work? Not when I come home. When I come home, my dog is going to bring me joy. I know that. But while I'm not here, what's going to bring me joy? What am I excited about, right? Maybe not about the difficult patient, but definitely about, helping them be less difficult, with other people, including myself, being that sounding board for them. It doesn't matter. So joy.
Mm-hmm.
Then I ask myself, what gives me strength today, right? Because I need strength and maybe I'm low on energy. So what can I do for myself to actually get through this day and be fair to other people, right? When you're low energy, you will be snappy, you will not do a great job. It's, somebody else will pay, right, for this. And we want to really avoid that because it's not fair. I'm a big believer in fairness, and there's not much of it, in this world, but really. And then the meaning. Why do I do this? Why do I still do this? And what made me do this in the first place? If I was to ask you now, like to just, switch the roles, why did you become a nurse? I'm sure you can remember the moment and why you did it when you did it, because that will stay forever. Whatever you do later, like we all know why we made certain choices. So Magda, why did you become a nurse when you did?
Oh my goodness. You have some magical power to
I
bring
do.
like a movie type scenarios in front of my eyes. So, I was born in Poland. I have a sister who is 5 years younger. And
Yeah,
my younger sister used to suffer a lot of chest infections. And
right.
what I recall, is the community nurses coming to our house, even in winter, there is a lot of snow, the road is not easy to navigate. They are coming to our house, giving my sister treatment, so injections, maybe some cupping therapy, whatever was prescribed by the doctor, and they were making her better. And I was so fascinated, like this lady is entering our house, she does something with my sister, pulling some magical tools from her bag, and then my sister gets better. So, of course, how old was I then? Maybe 7, 8 years old. I decided I want to be a nurse. And since that very young age, I started pursuing this narrative. Every day I was nursing, of course, teddy bears, maybe my sister sometimes. My grandfather bought me a real nurse's hat. He has access to
Oh,
hospital resources. I had a real nurse's hat, a stethoscope, I had a Litman, and I had a community bag like the nurses used to have and doctors. So, is how this person made me feel, how she made my sister feel, is the feeling. So when I'm now describing, it's like I'm really standing in that room, observing the nurse doing treatment to my sister.
and yeah,
So thank you for
this
this
is a
question.
beautiful story, honestly. Like I saw it, the way you were describing it. And to me, it sounds like meaning. Already that young, you saw, and with
Mm,
your child brain that is
mm,
not fully developed, with all due respect, right, your intelligence back then, you saw how meaningful it was
wow.
to be this person, right? And how it also brought joy, to your sister. I mean, she could breathe and she could be a child again and she could maybe play and not stay in bed. And you were like, I want to have those superpowers, obviously, right? So I think we all need to have that when we're having a bit of an existential crisis at work. Like, why did I start doing this in the first place? And also, is this still enough for me to stay here? Is it
Mm,
still meaningful? Am I contributing in a meaningful way? Or am I just being too scared or lazy to leave? And I'm using these words on purpose, right? And now my question to you again, why did you decide to leave? And why was that good? And maybe, you found a different kind of magic,
mm. This is, I really like when I'm getting challenged in this session because there were few guest speakers before that asked the questions back and really made me look deep inside what actually is happening. So my story is not about burnout, and I am
Mm,
very that I
good.
don't go around and say, "Oh my God, I've recovered from burnout and I left toxic work environment." No, it's nothing like that. I really still see myself that I got frustrated. Perhaps I
Mm,
got angry that I saw the same systemic issues in healthcare organizations, and I saw my colleagues suffer from burnout and stress, not being able to navigate perhaps the situation to the level I was navigating. For me, I never ever considered that I was stressed or I could leave profession because it's too difficult or because it's too challenging. So one day, probably 3 years ago, I received a feedback from a very senior leader who told me during morning endorsement when we were drinking tea and talking about the meaning of life,
oh,
because that was the type of leader that I used to work with. This lady told me, Magda, nursing is not your passion anymore. And at
wow.
that point, of course, I was like, what do you mean? I went into the profession as a
Yeah.
mature student. I did my studies in my late 20s. What's happening in there? But then the curiosity kicked in, and I'm like, what is she seeing? She saw that my coaching and mentoring was bringing much more powerful effect, not only on individuals, but also on teams. And then questioning and curiosity, I've discovered I can have more than one passion. It's not that I don't like nursing, but something else took over. But the values between the two professions, the empathy, compassion, unconditional positive regard, empowering the other person to try and shape the narrative, and as you have just described, tell themselves better stories. So either we tell
Mm,
ourselves stories that we are continuously stressed and burned out, Are we gonna start asking questions what brings us joy? What is our strength? What is
Yes.
the meaning? So
Yeah.
we are the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yes. And this is one. So to me, it sounds like you evolved, right? So what you're doing now is still connected to your initial, calling, because you chose for another calling. You didn't choose to own a casino. I always play with this. I'm like, you know what? I could just, I know. I was like, I could just work, in Sephora and, sell makeup. I do fantasize about that sometimes. I just think like it's beautiful, right? Because we deal with a lot of ugliness all the time. And for those of you who might not be in healthcare profession and who are listening now, like people hate us a lot, our patients. We're not like loved and appreciated. I always tell my students, if you want to be liked, don't be in this profession because you will be disliked a lot. you know because we have to bring out the ugly to make
Mm,
it eventually beautiful. People have to open up to us in ways that they despise, right? And we're witnessing it. So we get a lot of hate. So that means you really, like your boss said, have to be passionate about what you're doing,
mhm,
because otherwise you will not remain resilient. It will start to chip off slowly, slowly. And maybe attack your core confidence. And nobody likes that, and it's not a good thing, right? So I like that you had, and this is one of those chance encounter moments. In psychology, there's a whole theory about chance encounters, like where this seemingly not so significant person in your life, like, yes, your boss is important at work, but they're not like a personal friend and whatnot. You have a moment with them and it can change the trajectory, right? Because of what they said, when they said it, and how they said it, and how you received it, right? So I think
mm.
that was your chance encounter.
Wow.
Right. And I had mine when I was leaving the job I really loved with International Criminal Court, like working with victims. Like I said, I come from Bosnia. A lot of it was, experiencing personally war trauma and just wanting to give back to people. And I've done it for 15 years, and it was rewarding and exciting and demanding in all the right ways. And a lot of the people were like, why would you leave that? It's a great job. It's like a permanent job. It's UN affiliated. But I had a conversation with somebody I only like, sporadically work with, but I really appreciated this person's opinion. And he was a bit older than me, also in career and in life. And he's like an ex-cop from Australia who, then did some trainings later for other investigators and stuff. So he was really like doing great job with UN as well. And I knew how much he loved it. And I was like, his name is John. And I said, John, I want to ask you something. And, like, just please be honest and open with me. I said, I'm really at the crossroads. If I continue with this career, I know I will progress, but I don't think I will continue to be a good mother. I don't think my kids will be supported by me in the right way. It's very consuming, and I'm trying to make a good decision here. I care about my career, but I don't want that to come at the cost of, my family.
Mm,
Obviously, they're human beings and they need me. I said, so what's your perspective? Because, at that time he already had grandchildren. And he knew me. He knew how ambitious I was and the work I was doing. And he immediately thought, and I always thought like, he's like this, like he's all about his job, right? John told me, he said, leave. I said, what? Like, just like, I'm like, wait a minute, really? Like not even debating. He's like, don't do what I did. He said, don't make my mistake. I didn't even know my children. He's like, what I'm now doing is giving all the love and attention to my grandchildren. But he said, I skipped a whole generation because of my job. He's like, you can never get that back. He's
mm,
like, he was the only person who told me I was not crazy to leave. And he said, leave. It's
mm,
time.
mm,
And I didn't leave because John told me, but John's opinion did help me. And it was a bit of a shock, just like when your boss told you, like, you're not, he's like, it's not worth it. I always remember this. He said, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Wow.
right, okay, thank you, John.
Wow.
And he was right. It's not worth it. And,
Mm.
and then when I spoke with my children, I said, look, I promise you, next job, it will be without traveling. I'm not going to be leaving you behind, whatever. And only then they admitted they really suffered. And they were like, oh, that's so good, right? Because they were little soldiers, because I was a soldier, like you kind of have that effect on people. Like you said, with your team, you were like this, and then they had to be like that. And, like, right? So
Absolutely.
you're not giving a good example. Like we all have to acknowledge that, not only because this was my kids, but I am a living proof of you can have both. You can have a career, you can have family. I never like when people say it's either or, this and that. No, no, no. You can have it all, but it should not come at the cost
Yeah.
of this or that. So you have to balance the cost.
Yeah.
And we all sometimes give more here and a little bit less there, but in the end it should be balanced out. And that was me then deciding, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna, like turn right here or left. Like I'm not gonna stay on this road anymore. But these are tough decisions, and I do acknowledge that I was privileged enough to choose.
Yeah.
I think for many women, especially, I'm gonna say that consciously, they don't have a choice. They have to stay in jobs that are toxic, potentially abusive, environments. And I know how much sacrifice there is there, and that not everybody has a choice. I had a choice because of my education. I had a choice because of the opportunities that came my way. So I am aware of that.
Mm. Yeah, I think the more awareness you get, the more choices happen, because very often we are stuck in a narrative where we only see two choices, and there is either A or B and nothing else. And this is what I see again through coaching, mental agility interventions with a lot of people. And when they start embracing the situation and seeing that there is 50 other choices there, then okay, maybe I cannot leave this job like immediately, even if it's toxic, but I can start making better choices to perhaps make it less toxic or create another opportunity, upgrade myself, shift the mindset a little bit and so on. So I really love when you were describing the situation, because we can now see that the definition of success is also shifting. The
Yeah.
previous
Oh,
definition of success is being successful, whether it's a professional level, money, properties, acquiring as much wealth as you can. And now people are talking about mental wellness, or the peace of mind being the definition of success, being able to choose what you want to do in life. This is actually the definition of success.
it is. And at different times in life, you will want different things and you will define success differently. And so, your 7-year-old self, of course, all you could think of is to be a nurse, because this was all you knew. And this was the magic you knew, right? And then as you went on, the reality kicked in. It's not only magical, right? And it doesn't always, end up in magic. And then you took a step back and you reinvented yourself or redefined yourself, but you also took your experience with you. And I think, nowadays nobody will really stay in one path forever. It's impossible in today's economics and the way, the life is moving. AI is taking over. Hello. So all that stuff is happening, right? So we need to be flexible. There's absolutely no other way. And you are teaching about agility. It is a key word, but it's a key skill as well. And it's not just a word, right? And it's very hard always to adjust, to embrace change. And I know, like, with each year of life, it's more difficult, but
Mhm,
it's the only way, right? Because the
mhm,
change is the only constant. We know that. And it aligns with what we try to explain to people in therapy. The only way to manage life in general is to be psychologically flexible.
mm,
That's the opposite of rigid. you know?
Mm.
And people don't like to hear that. And, they're like, what do you mean? Like, I don't want to change this or that. Like, this is very fine. Like you said in the beginning, each person is an individual and different things will work for different people. Therapy is not for everyone. And I always say that as a mental health professional, I believe in it, but it also has limits,
Mhm.
which leads us to something we were discussing before the session, lifestyle. This is something that, and change or shift in career also shifts the lifestyle, right? So when I talk to people about their career, any crisis, I tell them, I'm like, let's park that for a second, like not the job itself. And, what do you want to, what kind of a lifestyle would you like to have? And oh my God, people know it. I'm like, do you still want to work 9 to 5? They're like, no. I want to travel. I want to be like more flexible. I want this. I want that. I want to spend more time on the beach. I want to spend more time with my kids or whatever it is. And from that, we can see what kind of a job can you do to have that
Mm.
lifestyle, to sustain it and to maintain it. And, to feel like you have it all pretty much, right? And I
Mm.
think this is something that it's not talked enough about. We only talk like lifestyle we see in these magazines when people are
Yeah.
showing their fancy houses and rich people, have like a fancy lifestyle. We all have a lifestyle. Hello, we do. I have a lifestyle. You have a lifestyle. Each member of our audience today has a lifestyle. Let's all ask ourselves, what kind of a lifestyle do I have? Right?
Mm.
Oh, is it hectic, chaotic? I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. It's too much. It's too little. I'm bored. I'm overstimulated. What is it? And then what do I want it to be? And that's really such an intuitive question and also can be answered in this intuitive way. I don't know what was your experience. I'm sure you had those questions for yourself because once you're making a big change, like switching professions,
Mhm.
why not make it really good? you know why would you go from one chaos to another,
I
right?
love, I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. And again, it's about the questions that we ask is not about the answers that we get. But
Yes.
very often, like you see in your practice and myself as a coach, very often I am the only person who will ask this type of question to my client.
Yeah.
And then there is the hello moment. They're in front of the mirror. It's very raw, and they need to tell the truth to themselves. It's very difficult to ask these questions to ourselves, and we know that. Unless we are really trained on that level, we are able to stand in front of the mirror and really start asking like
And we
life
have to have a very small ego. Yeah, I know it's hard.
life-changing questions. So I also love that you mentioned AI because I'm coming almost to a final conclusion. Imagine we are at 58 minutes and is
This
so
was right.
this conversation. You know, I also teach my clients to help them understand the current reality, and this is proven by science, and there is data on it already that we have not upgraded our human skills to deal with the reality that we have created. So we have created the AI, the progress is ultra fast, and it is normal to feel overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
we need to upgrade our agility skills, our resilience to be able to navigate stress, which is a part of life. There is no stress free life, even if social media is trying to sell us this
No.
kind of concept. So we need to really work on our human skills, on the agility, resilience, being curious, asking questions, acknowledging our own humanity. We are humans, we have limits. And thank you very much, Dr. You also said that superheroes also have limits. This is one of the
Yes.
biggest learning for me session.
Yes, absolutely. And you're totally right. Like, I'm definitely scared of AI in so many ways, right? In terms of dehumanizing certain things. This is the professional thing. I do believe still in old fashioned human connection that we should not lose. And we spoke about that a little bit prior to the session. But AI is here, it's here to stay. We need to adjust, we need to accept it. But that only can be done if we strengthen ourselves in our own identity, that we know who we are. because the moment you know who you are, nobody else is going to be able to tell you who you are or to challenge that. And that really helps with any challenges by other humans, by superhumans, by artificial, human intelligence, because, we are responsible for strengthening ourselves and having that core understanding of who we are. And that only can be done with asking ourselves the tough questions like you described earlier. And it's a little bit painful, but no pain, no gain. We all know that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm super grateful for this session. So I want to end with gratitude because thank you for the challenging questions, for the compassionate, empathetic, kind, human questions. And thank you for everyone who attended this session. We have a lot of viewers who are coming every single week, like
Amazing.
Mir, Dr. Salah is new, so thank you for connecting with me. Najah, Minan, thank you for your lovely comments and do share your feedbacks after the sessions. These sessions are now available also on Spotify and on Apple Podcast. And also stay tuned because I have just started recording a studio podcast called From Hero to Human, which is talking a lot about the narrative shift. So yes, we need your support to make this conversation global, not only here in Dubai, not only in UAE. Let's take it everywhere and let us embrace our own humanity. Thank you, Dr. Mladina. So
Thank
grateful.
you so much for having me. I was grateful to be invited and to contribute. And really, your passion that you really have, that is evident. It's really, contagious. And thank you for that. Even on Monday evening, I just felt such a boost. So thank you for that. And thank you again for our audience and for listening patiently. I hope it was useful.
Lovely. Thank you so much and good night, everyone.
Good night.